Last Sunday, we launched our Advent worship series on the angelic theme of Do Not Be Afraid. Today's Advent candle is the peace candle, and our theme is Do Not Be Afraid to Bring Peace. Sounds pretty great to me. Let's take a vote. All in favor of peace? And if we were in the sanctuary, I'm quite sure there'd be a lot of ayes or hands up in the air. All those opposed to peace, please vote no. Motion carries. We're in favor of bringing peace. That would be a quick sermon. Except I can imagine some brave people asking a question. But how do we bring peace? And how do we bring peace on which topics? We are living in such a polarized world right now. Many of us have our own little bubbles where it appears that everybody agrees. But get outside those bubbles. If you're a city person, listen closely to someone who lives in a rural area. If you're a registered member of one political party, listen in to recordings from a different party's convention. How do we bring peace in such a polarized time? Here's a hypothetical scenario that some of you may have lived out recently. Since we're not gathering for Thanksgiving in person, let's talk politics over Zoom. And Grandpa, why did you vote for that guy that the rest of us cannot stand? Let's bring peace by allowing us to convince you that you are wrong. Let me know how that approach worked for you. How to bring peace when so many of us are anxious or scared, when it feels like we are living in a perpetual state of fight or flight, when many families are living and working and doing school from home and there's not enough space, and our usual outlets for burning off steam are not available right now. No chance to get to the gym and go for a swim. It's better to hit a racquetball than explode in anger, but again, no racquetball courts. How do we bring peace to those with whom we share a house and family life? How to bring peace even when we can agree quickly on some big values and principles that God, and by extension the church, is to, quote, lift up the lowly and fill the hungry with good things, as Mary proclaims in what we call the Magnificat. That the work of God is to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives. That we agree with the prophet Isaiah that God loves justice and hates robbery and wrongdoing. Again, let's call for a quick vote. All in favor of these things, vote yes. But it gets harder when we don't all agree about who the lowly are and which captives are deserving of liberty. Or we do agree on the values of justice, but we have different strategies and prescriptions on how to get there. It can also be complicated when we really listen to these words from Mary. Mary doesn't just say that God's about the work of lifting up the lowly, but also scattering the proud. She doesn't just say that God is filling the hungry with good things, but also that God has sent the rich away empty. Who is the lowly? And who are the powerful? What is the threshold for defining who is rich and who is poor in our economy, or more to the point, in God's eyes? If we are supposed to not be afraid to bring peace, how do we do this in our day and in our time? Like this month, this week, today. I don't want to make myself out to be an expert here. No one, so I am told, wants to be preached at. And I am cautioned by some of Jesus' remarks. When people had gathered around an accused woman, Jesus said, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." In a different setting, Jesus warned his followers, "Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? First take the log out of your own eye." And yet, and also, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Do not be afraid to bring peace. There's a circular aspect to this, that if we want to bring peace to others, to the world, it helps if we can be genuinely peaceful within ourselves. That if we want to truly and genuinely bring peace, it helps to not look like a hypocrite. There are great issues at stake right now in our city and in our country and in our world. Issues about justice and democratic principles that are being debated and undermined. Big issues like the increasing gap between those at the top of our economic system and a growing percentage of people below the poverty level or at great risk. Issues about trying to keep people safe with periods of lockdowns, with governors and others asking people not to gather indoors or outdoors with anyone outside their immediate household and to avoid travel, because that will help keep all of us safe and keep the healthcare system from being overwhelmed. And there are competing values deep in our DNA of personal freedom, with beliefs that, as young ones like to say, "No one is the boss of me," and others will chime in, especially the government. There are great issues at stake right now in our city and in our country and in our world. How do we bring peace? I said earlier that no one wants to be preached at, and by no means have I achieved any sort of spiritual perfection. So in what I'm about to say, I'm also preaching to myself. I have a few tips or suggestions or reminders for our desire to bring peace this week, this month, today. Be gentle with yourselves and with others. Know that it is okay to take a break. It's good to have these big overarching values like justice and liberty and righteousness, and awareness and orientation toward the lowly and the hungry that are to serve as navigational tools to guide our actions and our efforts. It's essential, I believe, to hold to these consistent values. But it is also good to have an honest awareness that we ourselves fall short, both by what we do and by what we fail to do. We come up short of our ideals over and over. So we should be careful in how we direct our anger at others if and when they come up short, if we want to be peacemakers. I am more and more convinced that we need opportunities for genuine conversation. Opportunities to learn more and appreciate other perspectives and to share questions, not as an attempt to destroy their arguments or convince the other person that they're wrong and we're right. That rarely brings peace. Advent is a season we remember and hold fast to the promises of God. It's usually such a festive season filled with candles and light and jingle bells and gift giving and treats and kindnesses dropped off unexpectedly. Things are different this year, And yet, can we get our hearts ready? Can we be expecting to receive good news? And will others be able to experience the good news of God by our own actions? Do not be afraid to have hope. Do not be afraid to bring peace. Please bless us all, O God, with your love and courage and grace, that we might be your people on this day and always. Amen. Peace be with you.